Herzlich willkommen bei Digitale Optimisten. Ich bin Alex und in diesem Podcast bin ich auf der Suche nach den Elon Musks von morgen, die mit ihren Ideen aber noch ganz am Anfang stehen. Heute mit der zweiten Folge meines Gesprächs mit Cecilia Chiolerio von Twostay, die mit der Coworking-Branche das machen will, was Airbnb mit der Hotelbranche gemacht hat. Ich bin davon überzeugt, dass die Pandemie unseren Arbeitsalltag fundamental verändern wird. Freier, unabhängiger und wahrscheinlich auch flexibler. Genau da setzt Twostay an. Wenn du die erste Folge nicht gehört hast, hier ein kleiner Ausschnitt von dem, was Cecilia den ganzen Tag so macht.
I think that's the main challenge is like how to survive, right? And it comes out to have enough money to manage to stay alive more and then to raise more money and so on. So I think that's the main biggest challenge that as an entrepreneur you have, that you want to keep your company alive as much as possible and you have to make everything possible to do so.
Also, ab in den zweiten Teil dieses Interviews und in die Rapid Fire Questions. Die nächste Folge von Digital Optimisten mit frischen Ideen und neuen Gründern kommt nächsten Montag. Bis dahin, viel Spaß und bis bald.
The only block of questions that are left are the rapid fire questions. So rules are, I don't know why I call them rapid fire questions, because people tend to ask them, people tend to answer them at length sometimes. So feel free to take your time. You don't have to give only a single word answer. But there are just different questions that I found interesting from different areas. They're not connected at all. Okay, so I'll give you the first one. So the first one is, your Instagram channel looks like an advertisement for Patagonia or Jack Wolfskin, to be honest, because I was really impressed. I mean, you surf, you ski, you hike, you skate, you do it all. Everything that looks fun is what you do. And I wondered if you'd have to choose between one of them, between all of them. Yeah, and you could only do one of these things. It's like surfing, skiing, hiking, and skating. Which one would you choose?
Skiing. That's easy one.
Okay. Why are you from a region in Italy where, are you from, I don't know, southern Tyrol?
I'm a mountain girl.
Okay, great. Yeah, so it's not skiing, it's not hiking, it's skiing. It has to be in the winter.
Yes.
Next question is, what is a trait you admire most in others?
Wow.
It's a big one.
It's a really big one. I think the ability of not care about others people's opinion. I think I met a lot of people that care a lot about what others think. I think I care what other people think enough. But when I meet someone that really are good and just go straight in their path and really, I think not thinking about other people's opinions is always impossible, but caring way less and be super focus on what you do and what you can do and your opinion is, I think that's a really good quality that I would love to learn more.
Yeah, I can relate. That is certainly a great trait to have if you can balance it. I think, if you can balance keeping things in mind, but also, not being too swayed by other people's opinions. Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. Next question is, so I wrote down my next question. I'm going to tell you what I wrote down, and we have to think about how we can tweak it because you already answered it. But the question that I wrote down is, what is something you wished you knew before becoming an entrepreneur? And we kind of answered that question because you had this 3 months period. So why don't I say something like, another question I like to ask is, imagine, you studied in, I think Barcelona, right? Is where you did your master's? Yes. So imagine you can maybe in a year or two, you're a successful entrepreneur. You can go back to the master's ceremony and people just graduated, and you can give a speech, right? You can tell them something.
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell to that graduating class in Barcelona?
In terms of startup? Like about the journey or just about the personal development?
Whatever you think these people need to know that just graduated university.
Yeah, so for me, really about what professor tell you and all these struggle on interviews and all these cancel for perfect career path, that's all like a tons of bullshit, because at the end of the day there's so many other options out there, and it's just you that you have to discover it. And for me it was really like something that I discovered day by day. But if I would have followed what other people told me that perfect career was, I was probably now in something like consulting or investment banking, which is super cool job, but it's not for everyone. So maybe for you it's something else. And even if you are graduating from a business school, I think you have all the options out there, and really take the time to explore them all and see what's the best fit for you. Because I think it's just like, yeah, everyone is really profound different. And if have you have to discover what's best for you and what doesn't work for you at all, and then it's the only way that you can be really successful in what you do.
I mean, that ties in very nicely to what you said to my to I think the previous question is not not giving too much weight to other people's opinions,
Yes.
right? Because and thinking about yourself. I actually had Mike on the show a couple episodes ago.
Okay.
Mike Malko, and he was he had a fantastic answer. I think I asked him the same question, to be honest, and he told me the story of how he came, how he how he got into Y Combinator. And it started at some point when he was at university, just like you described, and everyone was talking about, hey, what's the consultancy I should be going to, what's the bank or investment bank or whatever, what's the next internship. And he actually sat down and thought really hard about the question, what's the coolest thing that I can do? Where do I really want to go? What's the thing that I really want to do? And he said to himself, I should be joining a startup in Silicon Valley. That's the coolest thing I can do. And then so he really thought for himself. And I thought that was a genius answer. I never thought about that when I was in university. I wish somebody had told me that. That I can think for myself, which is super stupid because in university you're expected to think for yourself. But I didn't do that at the time, not at that extent. And so he wrote, I forgot the number now, but he wrote mails and mails and LinkedIn messages over LinkedIn message to these startup founders. And one founder, he said, or she said, yeah, come over here, we'll take care of the visa, we need people. And then he started his journey into Silicon Valley, and it all originated basically with the thought that you just fleshed out: is think for yourself, and don't let other people spoon feed you what might be the best career. So that's a great answer.
This, but I also, what I think is that it's cool to have these big goal in mind, right? Like when you're really out of business school, you think you have it all straight out, and you know what you want to be, and it's like a really big goal, right? But at the end of the day, it's, yes, it's needed, it's super cool, but it's also a small step they are counting. Really, for me, joining this startup was just like a something in between, right? It was like, okay, I can do this because I'm not found the perfect job yet. But I think exactly this where you grow as a person, when you really land in things you would not really expect. So always to be open to try and to make a lot of errors, because yes, there's not a perfect path designed for you. And maybe other people will tell you that it's like this, because I think everyone out of business school has like a standard path to follow, right? But yeah, maybe you can just try other stuff and see how they feel for you. And that's, I mean, when you're out of business school, it's like so young that doesn't really matter. There's nothing to lose, right?
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. Next question. What is the book that you gift most to others?
I think it's like people knowing me will laugh about it, because all the time they ask me about, I answer this, Bad Blood, this Terrano story.
Yeah, I heard about it. Bad Blood. Is that a no? Wait, is that a Netflix show or something?
They also made, I think they are about to release a movie or so, but the book, it's super well written. And I think if you're doing startup and you're a woman, you have to read that book. So it's the story of Tyrannos. So I think, and Elizabeth Holmes. So I'm pretty sure that everyone knows about it. I mean, the book is great how it's written, I think, but it's also for me was awesome to really realize how much when you're in startup, there's so much stereotypes and there's so much like ways that other people expect you to be. And I think it's just because we are in these like, yeah, we are having this big example of Facebook, of big startup out of the garage and then playing kickers as a main um, office job and so on. So that's how startup would look like, right? And that's how a founder needs to look like. And I think it's really what happened in the story of Elizabeth Holmes, right? Like everyone wants to like wanted to see someone like her, like a power woman made it that can do it and can really be successful. And she just became what everyone wanted her to be. And I think that's the biggest wish I give to myself, but to everyone that does the job that I do. It's really like to do it your own way and not what other people think that a founder should look like or entrepreneur should look like, but just like the way it feels good for you. And I think for me that's the book I give the most to, obviously people that do the job I do, but also to people that know me, to try to, yeah, make them understand how I think a bit better.
Yeah, I remember. I think I saw the documentary on Netflix, a couple, or was it on Netflix? I don't know. But yeah, it's, I mean, it's a fascinating story about Elizabeth Holmes, who founded Theranos, right? Or Theranos, I don't know how to pronounce it. I think what were they trying to do again? Like test the blood of
Yeah,
people for some, in fact, I don't know, for some genetic diseases or something, something super revolutionary.
yeah, it was like
And what they,
a way
mm,
to get blood tested out of a single drop of blood. So like
yeah,
a
that was
really
it.
easy, something really like powerful to blood test and prevention from a lot of people, right?
Yeah, and they took the concept of minimum viable product MVP really far, because I think if I remember one part of the documentary at least, where they presented this, I don't know, this fancy device
Mm-hmm.
that was supposed to do this testing in like a revolutionary amount of time. But they, when investors came, she showed that device to people, and then she, gave them the rest of the tour of the facilities, and people actually came to that facility, took out the blood sample,
Yeah.
ran it through the traditional stuff, with all the, I don't know, all the big machines that you have to do, and then they put the result back into the machine. So it's like smokes and mirrors. And at some point, it was a this whole thing kind of, it was a huge, I think she was on the cover of Forbes, she was the next Zuckerberg and
She
the next wunderkind of
like
entrepreneurship.
in the board,
And then
like big people sitting and everyone
mm,
is just believing in it, right? But also she's
yeah.
a terrible leader, and that's also something like this, right? Like I think it's super important that when you are a founder you also have to realize that maybe you're not the perfect match for every state of your company, right? And I think she was maybe a good like dreamer and a really good inventor, but not so much of a good manager. So actually not good at all, right? So it's also something that I think as a founder you have to think about, like what about if I'm not going to be the best person to drive the company in the next phase or something like this.
Mhm. Yeah, it's good. I actually saw Elizabeth Holmes in a Soul Cycle class once in San Francisco, which was come to think of it, it was, she was just a regular. It was after the whole thing happened. She still had her huge mansion in San Francisco, and
Yeah, it's
I
still,
saw her once.
I think it still goes on. I think it's still, she still took as a cool example of female founder, like in a way
Mm.
maybe she is, but in so many no.
Mm, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, also we talked about WeWork before and Adam Newman, how, I think when it comes to startups, there is this huge, well, gold rush almost for ideas, a lot of money swirling around. And I think like every other area where there's a lot of money, there's also people who, you know, want to take advantage of that, and maybe think too big, or I don't know, I don't want to blame anyone, but certainly Adam Newman and Elizabeth Holmes, I think they're like examples for how things can also, they don't always have to be the Zuckerberg story or the Musk story. They can also be, go a bit south.
I think it's just
Okay.
like good to know there are consequences, right? that
Mhm.
yes, what you do, it's a game that can work, but there's also something that can go wrong, and it's important that you know that there are stuff that can go wrong, and many times they actually do. So for me, it was super cool to just read and really see. I mean, you can't even call it as a negative example, right? Because maybe she just thought at that moment that was correct to do for the company and so on, but the consequences were not so good.
Yeah, you can just say that again. Cool. Second to last question.
Mhm.
Imagine you sell Tuesday for a large sum of money. What would you do the next day after you sold the company, both professionally and in your personal life? Although I have a hunch for your personal life, it might be skiing.
Yeah, a trip somewhere, like a really nice trip somewhere. It's a personal thing.
Yeah.
Uh,
And professionally, would you, I mean, would you scratch that entrepreneurial itch again? Would you, or would you just, I don't know, become an investor? What would you love to do?
I think both. I have these really like I'm looking at now a bit. I'm really exploring the idea of also becoming an investor, like in one future time. So I really like the idea of having or being exposed to different ideas and to help out different projects and so on. So I would really consider to become like a business angel or so. On the other hand, I'm not sure how long this could last, or at least I'm not sure if it could be the only thing I do, because I really like to do things and do it myself. So maybe I would just go on my list back again and find the next thing I could do.
Sounds good. Either way, sounds like two great options. Last question that I ask every guest on my podcast is, what is the best advice that you've ever received in your life?
Mm. I mean, and that's, I think it's business related, but it's also uh, personal related, is just don't wait to be ready. And I think this is really something that made a huge change for me. And it's just really about push yourself a little bit in the moment before you think, okay, I'm ready. I have everything under control. Everything in my, also if you want to go in sport, every gear it's there. No, like just go a little bit earlier, because then it's too late. I think when it's you're already too ready to go, and you lose a lot about learning, a lot about experiencing things. So really, like I think it's maybe a lot of people would say stepping out of your comfort zone. Yes, but it's more about your inner part, right? Like when it's really you have not to yes when you just don't feel ready enough, then I think it's the right moment to do things.
That sounds wonderful. What a great advice
Mm.
for everyone. Also listening to this podcast, maybe thinking about, is there something that I want to explore as maybe a side project or becoming a full blown entrepreneur? So don't wait to be ready, I think is the perfect thing to say to such a person.
Yeah, I hope it helps.
Sis, yeah, Cecilia. Well, I think that is the end of our interview. That's all the questions I had. We certainly could go on and on. There's a lot more to dive into the business model and stuff, and to understand even more. But I really got a amazing impression of you personally, and also of the business. And I can only close this by saying all the best to you, to stay, and obviously everything else in your life. And yeah, I hope you can also have the time next winter to go skiing with a booming scaling business in the background.
Thank you so much. It was really cool to do this.